Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast. We're going to be wrapping up today's show. I wanted to touch on a little bit of NFL. Obviously, the draft took place over a couple weeks ago now, so we are just about moved on from it, but we do still have stories coming out in particular related to the most shocking move of the draft, and that was the Michael Penix selection by the Atlanta Falcons with the 8th overall pick. And we got a story that came out on Monday afternoon. It was from Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer, put out a report that part of the reason that Kirk Cousins decided to leave Minnesota and go to Atlanta was because of the fact that, quote, the Vikings were very upfront with the 35-year-old about the possibility that even in the case he stayed, they'd take a quarterback for the future high in the draft. So this idea that he was going to potentially have somebody knocking on the door for his job opportunity is something that drove Kirk Cousins away. Now the Falcons were able to give out more money anyways, or at least were more willing to hand out money to Kirk Cousins, and that was obviously a huge part of the situation. But he seemed to think that he was going to have some more security going to Atlanta, which is why he was, quote, frustrated and confused when they decided to take Michael Penix Jr. with that 8th overall pick. And the fact that the conversation between Cousins and the front office didn't happen until Atlanta was already on the clock. It sounds like Atlanta had Michael Penix as their number 2 quarterback on the board, and I guess to some degree, I mean, Cousins and his agent wasted no time getting the story out that he was upset with the fact that the Falcons decided to go with a quarterback. It was literally, I think that the Bears were on the clock when the story came out. ESPN's Pete Thamel, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, he ended up reporting that Cousins' agent had told him about the frustration that he didn't know until they were on the clock. So if that was going to be sort of the gut reaction anyways, and granted, because they waited this long, there was definitely some feeling of betrayal, but if you are the Falcons in this situation, you're trying to keep it on the low that Michael Penix, it was their number 2 overall prospect or at least quarterback prospect in this draft, that they didn't want that potentially getting leaked and having other teams use it against them. But at the same time, I don't know. It's a very interesting conversation in terms of the ethics behind being a general manager and when you key your players in on certain types of situations. And they ultimately decided that they weren't going to tell Kirk Cousins, but that was clearly a contentious point for him, and he had expected them to use that 8th overall pick to try and help improve the team for the upcoming 2024 season. So, again, all of this to be said, the Michael Penix Jr. situation is going to run into the regular season and is going to, it's really difficult, I feel like, for Kirk, because it's one thing if he's in Minnesota and he's led them to a playoff win and he's been here all of these seasons. It seems like the locker room was really bought into Kirk Cousins there in Minnesota, and if he or the team is struggling, maybe there are some people clamoring for his job, but he at least sort of has a backbone in the franchise in the area to have some level of support. He's now going to be walking into Atlanta where, it seems clear from their front office that maybe they didn't even necessarily seem to believe that they were quite to the level of contention that a lot of people were hyping the Falcons up to be when they made the signing of Kirk Cousins. And they have no real attachment to him. It's not like he's not a star necessarily in the NFL where he has all of these, accomplishments throughout the course of his career, like in Aaron Rodgers going to New York. And it just feels like there are going to be a lot of people probably pretty quickly ready for Michael Penix Jr. that want to see this exciting upside of who was one of the most electric players in college football. Again, I've been consistent on that. Do I necessarily think he's going to be a tremendous pro? I have my doubts, but at the same time, he was super exciting in college, and he has all the arm talent to be able to potentially be a pro here and be a good pro, I should say. He already is technically a pro. But, I can understand the level of betrayal. Also the fact, though, that he was willing to, and not just willing to, wanted to leak the story about how upset he was just minutes after the pick was officially announced, that, he is definitely very uncomfortable with the situation, and the fact that he did so quickly is only going to make it a bigger story when training camp and the regular season all kicks off. So it's going to be just a very contentious situation there. Now, the Falcons feel comfortable that they're going to be able to make it work for the immediate and the near future. I believe it was GM Terry Fantano who said that part of the thought process behind this, besides the fact that they fully believe in Michael Penix Jr. as a quarterback in the NFL, is the fact that they felt like they dropped the ball a little bit, not having a succession plan for Matt Ryan. And obviously the past couple seasons have been pretty disastrous for the Falcons from that quarterback perspective. Marcus Mariota was benched about halfway through the year in 2022. Last year, I feel like, was one of the worst situations that one of the worst QB rooms that I have ever seen personally. As far as a day one plan, like, obviously when Aaron Rodgers goes down on the first drive of the season, that hurts if you're a Jets fan, but there was at least a plan that you could have one of the greatest of all time playing the position. Never saw it with Desmond Ridder. Taylor Heineke, as much as he was fun when he led Washington to that playoff run in, 2020? 2019? I think it was 20. But for them, it just felt like they never really had a legitimate plan that was going to put them in a real level of contention. And as a result, their defense actually overachieved, and they still won 7 games, which was great. But one of the most dysfunctional red zone offenses that we've seen in the league in years. And it's coming from a Patriots fan who has also seen his fair share of red zone disasters in recent times as well. But, I understand the thought process behind wanting to make sure that you aren't left sort of rudderless from a quarterback position. You are bringing in this older quarterback coming off of a serious injury, that you want to make sure that you do have some type of backup plan. But again, the way that they sort of went about all of this is a little bit suspect to me, and I just don't think that it was greatly executed. And again, I don't know necessarily when the right time would have been to bring up to Kirk Cousins that they were planning on drafting a quarterback. It definitely wasn't during free agency itself. I mean, maybe they could have put out, feelers saying we're high on a couple guys in this draft and we are potentially looking into it. They were obviously trying to sign Kirk Cousins, though, so they wanted to entice him to come into the building and sign with the organization. So definitely could have hurt their chances, but it at least would have led to a little bit less drama. And I feel like there would be nowhere near as much questions about this selection. Again, I wouldn't necessarily love it myself from my evaluation of Michael Penix Jr., but it would be far more defendable than some of the other moves we saw, like Bo Nix being taken by the Broncos at some point. Again, you might not love the quarterback prospect, but I can understand the idea of, especially when you're talking about quarterbacks, the NFL draft can be such a crapshoot. Just take a swing. You need the position, address it, and see how this sort of plays out. I think that there would be far less scrutiny if they hadn't just given Kirk Cousins $100 million guaranteed, plus I think another $80 million in the contract as a whole, even though I highly doubt that the contract ultimately is going to fully live up to the deal. Still not sure how this is going to play out for them. Terry Fontenot had the quote talking about it's a good problem to have. If we don't see Michael Penix Jr. for 4 or 5 years, that's a good thing. Not necessarily. I mean, it's just a total waste of this rookie contract. And now the Packers sort of walked a thin line with this, and it ends up, at least seemingly, is going to work in terms of the situation surrounding Jordan Love. They didn't get him on his rookie deal for most of his first few years. Last year they signed him to a pretty team-friendly 2-year deal, meaning he's now eligible for an extension again, and he is going to get paid. Now, he, in theory again, pulled off enough to show that he is worth the money, but they weren't able to necessarily reap the benefits of having a quarterback on that rookie contract. The number one example I always go to is the fact that, of course, Brock Purdy has been the biggest bargain for the 49ers they could possibly ask for over the past couple seasons, and it's allowed them to surround him with so much extra talent, and why they've made the NFC Championship 2 years in a row and were in the Super Bowl last year in overtime with a great chance to take down the Chiefs. But I don't know. Let me know in the comment section how you feel about it. I feel like it's probably the last time we're going to be talking this situation for some time. We've hammered it a lot lately, but wanted to at least sort of get this new report sort of out in the air and talk that through. But again, let us know what you feel in the comment section. That is all we have time for today. Thank you very much for tuning into the GSMC Sports Podcast. Thank you to the GSMC Sports Network for allowing us to host this show. We are live every 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern on weekdays, so be sure to catch us out. Check us out on YouTube, where we post the clips of our entire shows here, not just myself, but the other shows we have here at the GSMC Sports Network. Check us out on social media for more exclusive short content. Like, follow, subscribe, wherever you keep up with us. And we will see you tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go.